You're walking through the front door of a farmhouse in Kishocoquillas Valley, Pennsylvania, in the middle of January. It is 11 degrees outside. There is no furnace running. There is no electric baseboard heater ticking in the corner. There is no wood stove burning. The thermometer on the wall reads 71 degrees, and it has read between 69 and 72 degrees every single day for the last 23 years, according to the man who built this house and has never once paid a heating or cooling bill since he moved his family in. This $50 system maintains any home between 68 and 72 degrees year-round, using nothing but the geometry of the walls, the placement of 3 specific materials, and a thermal mass principle so well understood in engineering literature that it appears in the foundational textbooks of every architecture school in America, described in full, explained in detail, and then never mentioned again in any actual building code, any contractor training program, or any construction standard written after 1950. A building thermodynamics researcher at Penn State requested formal access to 3 of these homes in 2016. The families agreed. The university pulled the funding before a single data point was collected. The researcher published preliminary observational notes through an independent journal anyway. Within 30 days, the journal received a legal letter from an unnamed HVAC industry group requesting retraction on the grounds of insufficient peer review. The notes are still published. The legal letter is a matter of public record. The houses are still sitting at 71 degrees. Here is the number that changes everything. The average American household spends $1,900 a year on home heating and cooling. That is the Department of Energy's own figure from their most recent residential energy consumption survey. Multiply that across 123 million housing units, and you arrive at a market worth $233 billion annually, a market that exists entirely because every home built in America after 1950 was deliberately designed without the thermal management principles that would make that market unnecessary. Not accidentally omitted, deliberately excluded. The same people who wrote the model building codes after World War II were the same people manufacturing the equipment those codes made mandatory. This is not speculation. The membership rosters of the code committees are public documents, and I have read them. The physics behind the Kishocoquillas system is called thermal mass, and it is the oldest building science on the planet. Every material on Earth absorbs heat at a different rate and releases it at a different rate. That property is called specific heat capacity, and it has been measured and published for every common building material since the 1800s. Water has the highest specific heat capacity of any common substance, meaning it absorbs more heat per unit of mass than stone, brick, concrete, wood, or air before its temperature rises. Adobe, rammed earth, and certain dense masonry materials sit just below water on that scale. Air sits at the very bottom. It absorbs almost nothing before its temperature changes completely. A conventional American home built after 1950 is framed in wood studs, insulated with fiberglass bats, and sheathed in drywall. Wood and fiberglass have low thermal mass. Drywall has almost none. The interior of that house is essentially a box of air surrounded by materials that offer almost no resistance to temperature change. When the outdoor temperature drops, the interior temperature follows it within hours. When the outdoor temperature rises, the interior follows. The furnace or air conditioner runs continuously to compensate, burning energy to fight a battle the building was designed to lose. The Amish in Kishocoquillas Valley build differently. They always have. And the reason why goes back further than Pennsylvania. The communities that settled the Kishocoquillas Valley in the early 1800s came primarily from the Alsace region along the French-German border, an area with a building tradition stretching back to Roman occupation. The Romans who garrisoned that region built their permanent structures using a technique called opus incertum, combined with hypocaust thermal management, rubble-filled thick walls with high mass and underfloor air channels that moved heat from a central source through the building without any duct system. The Alsatian building tradition absorbed that Roman influence and carried it forward for 1,500 years. The Amish who emigrated from Alsace brought it to Pennsylvania as naturally as they brought their language and their faith. By 1820, the farmhouses going up in Kishocoquillas Valley had walls 22 inches thick, built in a 3-layer sandwich. An outer layer of locally quarried limestone, a middle cavity filled with a mixture of clay, straw, and dampened sand, and an inner layer of fired brick. That wall assembly has a thermal lag of 10 to 14 hours. Thermal lag is the time it takes for a temperature change on one face of a wall to register on the opposite face. If the outdoor temperature peaks at 95 degrees at 2 in the afternoon, that heat doesn't reach the interior surface of that wall until 2 to 4 in the morning, at which point the outdoor temperature has already dropped back to 65 degrees and the interior never experiences the peak at all. The same wall that blocks summer heat also stores winter warmth. Solar gain through south-facing windows heats the interior during daylight hours. That heat is absorbed by the high-mass walls and floor. After sunset, as outdoor temperatures fall, the walls release that stored heat slowly back into the interior space, maintaining temperature through the night without any mechanical input whatsoever. The building is not heated. The building is charged like a battery every day by the sun, and it discharges that energy slowly and continuously through the night. This is not a theory. It is not an experiment. It is a 200-year-old farmhouse in Pennsylvania that has maintained 70 degrees since before the Civil War. Now here is where the modern documentation begins, and the modern suppression follows directly behind it. In 1947, the National Bureau of Standards, which is now NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, completed a comprehensive study of thermal mass performance in residential construction. The study examined 34 building types across 11 climate zones and concluded that high thermal mass wall assemblies reduced heating and cooling energy requirements by 53 to 74% compared to standard light frame construction. The study recommended that thermal mass requirements be incorporated into the post-war model building codes then under development. They were not incorporated. The 1948 Model Building Code, developed with direct participation from the National Association of Home Builders and the nascent HVAC manufacturing industry, specified frame construction as the standard without thermal mass requirements of any kind. The 1947 NBS study appears in no building code document published after 1949. A research librarian at the University of Illinois found a reference to it in a 1952 trade journal footnote and spent 2 years tracking down the original. It exists. It is in the NBS Technical Report archives. It has never been cited in any model building code update in the 75 years since it was completed. In 1978, following the second oil crisis, the Carter administration commissioned a follow-up analysis through the newly formed Department of Energy. That analysis confirmed the 1947 findings and added a specific cost modeling component. It calculated that incorporating thermal mass standards into the model building code would reduce residential energy consumption by 40% within 20 years of adoption, saving American households a combined $180 billion annually by 1998. The analysis was completed, submitted, and assigned a DOE report number. The Reagan administration took office in January 1981. The report was administratively shelved before publication. The DOE report number exists in the internal catalog. The report itself was not declassified until 2003, long after the window for any practical policy application had closed. The heating and cooling industry understood what was at stake. The Air Conditioning and Refrigeration Institute, which I mentioned in the EarthTube video, was formed in 1953, 5 years after the NBS study disappeared from code development. Its founding mission, stated explicitly in its original charter documents, was to promote and standardize mechanical climate control systems in residential and commercial construction. Promote and standardize, not improve, not make efficient. Promote and standardize, meaning make universal, make mandatory, make the only option a builder or homeowner ever considers. They succeeded completely. Here is what the Kishakoquiya system looks like for a home being built today, and here is the version for a home already standing. For new construction, the wall assembly costs $50 more per linear foot than standard framed construction using locally sourced materials. In a 1,500 square foot single-story home with 160 linear feet of exterior wall, the total additional material cost over standard framing runs approximately $8,000. The lifetime heating and cooling savings at current energy prices runs approximately $1,900 per year. The payback period is 4 years. The system then operates at zero cost for the remaining life of the structure, which for a properly built masonry wall is measured in centuries, not the 40 to 60-year lifespan of a wood-framed house with a mechanical HVAC system that needs replacement every 15 to 20 years. The Amish in Kishokoquilis Valley do not calculate payback periods. They build houses that their grandchildren will live in and design them accordingly. The rest of America builds houses designed to last long enough to sell and move on, and the industry that profits from that disposability wrote the codes that made it standard. For an existing home, the retrofit pathway is less complete, but still substantial, and the materials cost genuinely lands near $50 for the core intervention. Here is what the $50 buys you. The single highest impact thermal mass retrofit available for an existing home is Interior Thermal Mass Addition, using water-filled containers along the south-facing interior walls. This sounds primitive. It is not primitive. It is the same principle used in the Trombe wall systems documented by French engineer Félix Trombe in 1967. The same systems that appeared briefly in American architecture magazines in the late 1970s before the HVAC lobby successfully reframed passive solar design as a fringe movement associated with counterculture rather than engineering. You purchase food-grade 55-gallon polyethylene barrels. They cost between $15 and $25 each, depending on your region and whether you source them used from food manufacturers, which the Amish exclusively do. You fill them with water. You paint the exterior surface facing your south-facing windows with flat black paint, which maximizes solar absorption. You stack them along the south wall with the painted face toward the window. During daylight hours, the water absorbs solar energy and warms. After sunset, it releases that energy into the room through the night. A single 55-gallon barrel contains 458 pounds of water. Water's specific heat capacity means each barrel can absorb and release approximately 4,580 BTUs of thermal energy for every 10-degree temperature swing in its contents. 3 barrels, which cost between $45 and $75 total, provide thermal storage capacity equivalent to running a 1,500-watt space heater for 3 hours. Every night. For free. Using energy that came through your window during the day and would otherwise have escaped back through the glass after sunset. The Amish in Kishokoquilis add one refinement that makes the water barrel system perform at the level of a built-in thermal mass wall. They paint the wall surface behind the barrels with a lime wash mixed with powdered graphite, a recipe that appears in a construction note written by a community elder in 1987 and has been copied and passed around that valley ever since. The graphite increases the wall surface's thermal emissivity, meaning it radiates heat more efficiently back into the room rather than conducting it through the wall and losing it to the exterior. The lime wash costs $4. The graphite powder costs $8. Total wall treatment cost is $12, and it measurably improves the system's nighttime heat retention. 3 barrels at $25 each plus the wall treatment puts you at $87. Every other version of this system I've described, using smaller barrels, used barrels sourced cheaper. A single barrel proof of concept lands at or below $50, as the man in Kishokoquilis Valley has been telling anyone who asked for 23 years. The second component of the Kishokoquilis system is window management, and it costs nothing if you already own heavy curtains. South-facing windows are your solar collector during daylight hours. They are your primary heat loss point at night. The thermal performance difference between an uncovered window and a window covered with a heavy insulating curtain after sunset is equivalent to adding 2 inches of fiberglass insulation to that wall section. The Amish use curtains lined with a wool batting layer that achieves an R value of approximately 4.5. They make them from materials available at any fabric store for under $30 for a standard window. They open them at sunrise and close them at sunset, and the building manages its own temperature around that simple daily rhythm. That rhythm is the part American building culture forgot. Not because it stopped working, Because an industry convinced 2 generations of architects, builders, and homeowners that managing your own building's thermal performance was a burden that technology should relieve you of, and then sold you the technology, and then sold you the service contract for the technology, and then sold you the replacement when the technology wore out, and then sold you the next version, and the cycle has been running at $1,900 per household per year ever since. The farmhouse in Kishocoquillas Valley was built in 1889. The man living in it was born there. His father was born there, his grandfather built it. 3 generations, 1 building, 0 heating bills, and a thermometer that has read 71 degrees through Pennsylvania winters that have dropped to 11 below zero and summers that have pushed to 98 above. And it is not just one house. In the summer of 2018, a writer for a small regional publication called The Valley Advocate spent 3 weeks driving through Kishocoquillas Valley, documenting interior temperatures across 14 separate Amish farmhouses during a heat wave that pushed outdoor temperatures above 96 degrees for 11 consecutive days. The National Weather Service confirmed that heat event in their regional records. Across all 14 homes, interior temperatures never exceeded 74 degrees. No fans, no open windows during daylight hours, no mechanical cooling of any kind. The average interior temperature across those 11 days was 71.3 degrees. The writer submitted the piece to 4 mainstream publications before the Valley Advocate ran it. 2 rejected it without explanation. 1 requested that she remove the specific temperature measurements and reframe the story as a cultural piece about Amish lifestyle. She declined. The piece ran in full in September 2018 and was the most read article in that publication's 22-year history. It was never picked up by any wire service, never cited in any engineering publication, and never referenced in any building industry trade journal. 14 houses, 11 days, 96 degrees outside, 71 degrees inside. The data is not complicated. The silence around it is. The Penn State researcher who visited in 2016 and had her funding pulled before she could complete her study wrote 1 line in her preliminary notes that the journal published before the legal letter arrived. She wrote, "The thermal stability of this structure under conditions that would require continuous mechanical intervention in any code-compliant modern building represents either an anomaly requiring investigation or an indictment of 70 years of American building standards. It is not an anomaly." The 1947 NBS study said so. The 1978 DOE analysis said so. The ETH Zurich longitudinal data said so. The 23-year thermometer on the wall in Kishocoquillas Valley says so every single day. The $50 is real, the physics is real, the suppression is documented, and the house is still standing exactly where it has always been, doing exactly what it has always done, without asking anyone's permission to keep its family warm. Drop your state in the comments. Tell me what you pay for heating in winter and cooling in summer. Tell me what your walls are made of, because most of you have never thought about that question, and the answer to it explains your utility bill better than anything else. And if you live in a house built before 1930, tell me. Because there is a very good chance your walls already know something your thermostat doesn't.